Migration alert, a national crisis unfolding in the United States. Friends, welcome to Britain is Briefing. Today we open with urgent and deeply troubling news that is rapidly becoming a turning point in the national immigration debate in the United States and in the administration of President Donald Trump. What is unfolding right now is not just another policy dispute or partisan argument. It is a crisis with real human consequences, growing legal implications, and profound moral questions. Over the past several weeks, the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, commonly known as ICE, appears to have entered a phase of operations that many observers, legal experts, and community leaders are openly describing as out of control. Nowhere is this more visible, more explosive, or more alarming than in Minneapolis, Minnesota. This is a city already marked by historical tensions surrounding justice, policing, and public safety. Today, it has once again become the epicenter of national outrage, this time due to the consequences of what federal authorities have labeled Operation Metro Surge, a massive and unprecedented deployment of ICE agents into an American city. Operation Metro Surge, a historic federal deployment. Operation Metro Surge represents one of the largest domestic immigration enforcement actions in recent U.S. history. Thousands of federal agents were deployed into Minneapolis under the justification of immigration enforcement and public safety. But the scale, intensity, and tactics used in this operation have sparked widespread protests and violent clashes with local communities. What has transformed public concern into national outrage is a shocking and tragic fact. 2 U.S. citizens have died in connection with ICE operations in Minneapolis. This revelation has sent shockwaves across the country. National scandal and legal tension. The deaths of American citizens during the course of immigration enforcement operations have triggered a firestorm of criticism. Civil rights organizations, legal scholars, and state officials have raised serious questions about excessive use of force, lack of accountability, and constitutional violations. The situation has escalated to such an extent that the state of Minnesota has initiated legal action against the federal government, accusing it of using excessive force and violating state and federal laws. This is an extraordinary development, one that highlights just how severe the crisis has become. In response to growing unrest, the National Guard has been deployed on the streets of Minneapolis in an attempt to stabilize public order. This is a step not seen in many years for an internal conflict tied directly to the actions of a federal immigration agency. The symbolism is powerful and deeply unsettling. Armed military personnel patrolling in American City because of immigration enforcement gone wrong. The Minneapolis tragedy, a life lost. The event that ignited nationwide fury occurred on Saturday, January 24th in Minneapolis. ICE agents shot and killed a critical care nurse who worked at a veterans hospital. According to available records, the man had no criminal history. Witnesses say he was not the target of an arrest and was not being formally detained. The official ICE statement claims the agents acted in self-defense after facing violent resistance, but videos recorded at the scene tell a very different story. Even the Wall Street Journal, one of the most respected and conservative-leaning newspapers in the United States, has reported multiple inconsistencies in ICE's official account. The Minnesota Attorney General has since filed a lawsuit against the federal government, citing concerns that key information is being withheld and that the true nature of the incident is being deliberately obscured. Constitutional rights violated. According to witnesses and video evidence, the nurse was recording the scene on his cell phone, an act protected under the U.S. Constitution. He was attempting to assist a woman who had been sprayed with pepper spray by federal agents. Within seconds, ICE officers surrounded him, forced him to the ground, and fired 10 shots in less than 5 seconds, killing him instantly. The brutality of the scene is difficult to comprehend. A civilian, unarmed, on American soil, executed in daylight by federal agents. This was not a border incident. This was not a foreign conflict zone. This happened in the heart of the United States. Excessive use of force, and a pattern emerges. The killing of the Minneapolis nurse is not an isolated incident. It is the most visible example of a much broader and deeply disturbing pattern. ICE, an agency created in 2003, has experienced explosive growth under the current Trump administration. In just 1 year, the agency has more than doubled its number of agents, from approximately 10,000 to over 22,000. Training cuts in militarization. Previously, ICE agents underwent 5 months of training before being deployed into the field. Today, that requirement has been slashed to just 42 days. The result is a force that is heavily armed, highly militarized, and dangerously undertrained. Reports from across the country describe agents raiding schools, surrounding homes with automatic weapons, detaining war veterans without access to legal counsel, conducting operations without proper warrants. Deaths in custody, unexplained shootings, and temporary disappearances of detainees have drawn the attention of international human rights organizations. ICE is now under scrutiny not only domestically, but globally. A political maneuver. Perhaps the most alarming development is what many analysts are calling a political extortion strategy. In an unprecedented move, the U.S. Attorney General reportedly offered to suspend ICE operations in Minnesota in exchange for access to confidential voter records. This raises a chilling question. What does immigration enforcement have to do with voter records? Critics argue that ICE is being weaponized as a political tool, used to pressure states that refuse to align with federal priorities. A collapsing immigration court system. While billions of dollars are poured into detention and deportation operations, the immigration court system itself is collapsing. There aren't enough judges. Hearings are delayed for years. Legal backlogs grow larger every month. This creates a legal bottleneck that leaves immigrants, many of them ask for asylum, without protection, without due process, and vulnerable to abuse. Authoritarian warning signs. One of the most vocal critics of the current strategy is a political analyst who has studied historical patterns of authoritarian movements. His warning is stark. Claiming that only one leader can solve a crisis, especially a crisis that leader is actively fueling, is a classic authoritarian formula. Chaos and violence push the population to demand law and order. Fear becomes a political weapon. ICE, he argues, is being reshaped into an instrument of political power rather than a neutral enforcement agency. Why Minneapolis? A critical question remains. Why Minnesota? The state has a strong democratic tradition and a relatively low number of undocumented immigrants compared to states like Texas or Florida. And yet, over 3,000 federal agents have been deployed there under Operation Metro Surge. Many critics believe this is not about immigration at all, but about manufacturing chaos to justify emergency powers, including the possible use of military forces in domestic policing. A test of democracy. At stake is far more than immigration policy. This is a test of the limits of state power in the United States. No government should be allowed to deploy unjustified violence, undermine constitutional protections, and politicize institutions without consequence. Freedom, human life, and accountability are pillars of democracy, and today those pillars are under threat in the streets of Minnesota and the halls of Congress. A budgetary time bomb. The crisis is reaching a breaking point. Federal funding for ICE is about to expire. Democrats in Congress have made it clear they will not approve new funding without strict oversight and enforceable limits on the agency's power. This has triggered an unprecedented budgetary and political standoff. Final reflection. Friends, this crisis forces us to reflect deeply. This is not just about numbers, policies, or strategies. It is about people, families, communities, and the soul of a nation. the United States must decide whether it will remain a beacon of justice and dignity or allow unchecked force to replace the rule of law. I want to close with a message that transcends ideology. May God guide those who make decisions. May He protect those caught in the middle of this conflict, and may human life and dignity always come first. Because without those values, no country can truly call itself free.